Hello and welcome to this edition of Conversations with the Mayor. And as always, it's my pleasure to be seated with Mayor Brian Arrigo.
Great to
Brian,
see you, Ed.
welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. You know, we look forward to these conversations every month.
They always go by much too quickly.
Yeah, I know. They try and help me to keep to the time frames, and it's very hard. I said, when you start chasing the rabbit, it's hard to catch them. We're going to start today's conversation with a subject that's been quite a controversial subject within the city, and that's related to Chief Caffarelli's departure and the studies that have taken place related to that. And there have been many statements on both sides of the issues, and frankly, you know, people at this point are going to believe what they believe.
Right.
And so I think it's really important for this discussion that we kind of move ahead and look forward to what's going to be happening. And so with that in mind, one of the things that I think we can all agree upon is that there was a study done in the past, and that study, the highlights of that study probably provide some concurrence, I think, with some of your positions about things that you think need to be done and the need for further assessments and studies within the police department. So that being said, I think it'd be helpful to maybe talk about some of the things that came out of that study.
Yeah.
The study that you're proposing, and you know, what else are you looking to gain from this additional assessment versus what's already been discovered?
Yeah, and I think it's important to talk about probably the vision, or my vision, for the police department. You know, and we talk a lot, and I've talked a lot about 21st century policing.
Yep.
And I think that a lot of times people look at that as an empty buzzword, and you know, what does that really mean? And
Think of RoboCop, yeah.
So 21st century policing is really all about building relationships in the community. And it means our police officers, the philosophy of their work is building relationships with business owners, with residents, and with stakeholders, visitors who come, you know, to the sand sculpting event each year, or to the beach for that matter. But it's really building trust, and there are a couple of other tenets along with that. It's using technology, making sure that our officers are using technology, the newest technology available to them, but also that it's working, you know, and we've had some issues around technology in the department. It also is about de-escalating situations, right? A lot of the work that they do, they're interacting with folks who may have mental health issues, people who may have substance use issues, and they need the training and the ability to de-escalate situations. And they do a great job. They do a great job, and they've continued to do a great job. And the other part of that is that we want to make sure that their well-being is being taken care of. Mm-hmm. They spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, protecting all of us in the community. We need to, and I need to, make sure that they have the resources and the programs so that when they go home, their well-being is being taken care of, and when they come back to work from being home, that they're thinking clearly, and that they're able to make critical decisions in an instant. You know, it's an ever-changing, ever-challenging environment for the department, and these are the philosophies that we want to bring to the department. We want to bring it into the 21st century, and these are the things that we're going to do in this term, you know, in my term as mayor. So that's really the vision for the department. In terms of the reviews that have been done, and there's an ongoing review, as you mentioned. Now we have Arlington Police Chief Fred Ryan and Chelsea Police Chief Brian Keyes collaborating with Chief Guido, looking at the department, taking a hard look. And it was clear, you know, not only in our assessment process of the chief, which kind of resulted in a recommendation that we expand the pool of candidates. That was reconfirmed by this report that was found, you know, the report that was done in 2015. Mm-hmm. One of those recommendations being that we, you know, expand that pool for chief. And there are a number of, I think, recommendations and outlining of challenges that were put in that 2015 report. Unfortunately, it wasn't much of a blueprint for how we move forward. It was more of a laundry list of you know, challenges that the department has. What we're looking for from Chief Ryan and Chief Keyes is that blueprint. how can they work with, they're working with Chief Gatto now, how can they work with the department to make sure that we're laying out a framework and the next steps so that we can implement 21st century policing, that we can make sure that the resources that we're providing to the department are what they need, and that we have, and one of those recommendations was to expand the pool. Now, I have gone to the City Council. I've officially asked them to allow me to expand the pool. We are going to continue having conversations. On Monday night, we had a conversation that I thought was better than the first conversation. So we're making progress. But and the chairman of Public Safety, Councilor Patch, was open to having the conversation because, as I said, this is my proposal. I want to work with the Superior Officers Union. I want to work with the Patrol Officers Union. We've been working well with them. And I brought them into this conversation. I've told them, what I was planning to do in terms of trying to expand the pool. I want their feedback because I think we can get to a place where everyone agrees that we're moving in the right direction. And the final thing I'll say is, in terms of expanding the pool, it's not necessarily that I want to just go outside the department for the sake of going outside the department. The fact is, we need to make sure, and I need to make sure, that our men and women in the department can match up to and exceed anyone who is outside the department. This is one of the most important jobs in the city. The chief of police is an important job. And I want to make sure that we have the most qualified and best person for that job. And I want to make sure that our men and women can match up to anyone outside the department. I have faith that they can, but I need to have the ability to have a process where it's open and we can see, what's out there. And that's what the goal is. That's what the solution, I think one of the solutions we're going to have to getting to 21st century policing department is to make sure that we're able to expand that pool and implement some of the recommendations of the review that we end up having.
So when we look at it, there are two parallel things going on, if I understand it correctly. We've got the continued assessment and the recommendations that will come out of that, and then there's the search for the new police chief. So those are kind of going on in parallel.
They're going in parallel. I think the first step for the police chief conversation is to have the conversation with the city council and whether or not they're going to amend the special legislation to allow me to have an expanded pool for the position. So we can move forward on the chief side when we know how we're going to land with the city council. But the ongoing review of the department is continuing. I will say that Chief Gatto has done a tremendous job working with them, and there have been a number of things that have already been implemented to boost morale and to be able to make sure that we're working more efficiently and effectively.
So basically, Chief Gatto is working with the two gentlemen. You said the police chief from Arlington, and I forgot who the other person is.
So it's the police chief from Arlington, who is Chief Fred Ryan, and then Chief Brian Keyes, who is the police chief in Chelsea Police Department. They are both, and I will say this because they have been, their names have been thrown around, and it's been as if they're not well respected. They are two of the most respected police chiefs in the Commonwealth, and they are both very well recognized, and they've both been very helpful to the city, and they come with a lot of accolades, and they are top-notch individuals.
Well, that's good to hear, and like you said, there's going to be comments on both sides of the issue, and the key is, kind of move ahead.
Right, move ahead with solutions.
And that being said, the previous report and recommendations and so forth that come out of this report, are those going to be made public? Will the public actually be able to see and read and understand them?
So
them?
Yes, the previous report is now public. It is on the city's website. So that 2015 report that was done is available on the city's website. Our report will be public. We will, present it to the city council. I will make sure that that is available. That will be a public document, and we'll be able to, make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to see it. One part of that review, which is important too, is that there is a public feedback process. And so we will be asking.
Reading my mind.
We will be asking the community to weigh in, and there will be a community survey portion of this review, and that's an important part. Both Chief Kais and Chief Ryan have said it is really important to get some feedback from the residents, so that we can take some of what they're seeing on the ground and implement and put that into any recommendations that we have.
And that was a question I had, and frankly, maybe it's been stated before and I just missed it. Is there going to be a public input in this process in terms of things that people, recommendations or whatever, that the citizens of the city have relative
Absolutely.
to the police
And
department?
we're putting the final touches on that survey, and that'll be rolled out pretty quickly.
So is it going to be, and looking at the timeline for the whole assessment and recommendations and implementation of them, the process for there, I'm assuming that, like most of them, there's going to be the assessment process. They're going to develop the report. The report's going to be presented to your administration, and then you're going to present it to the city council. And then there will be recommendations coming from there that will probably need approval from the city council to implement. Is that kind of the way you see it flowing?
I think some of I don't know how many of the recommendations will need to be implemented by the city council, but some of the recommendations may be about funding, right? So it may be about some of the resources that we have to put into the department. So that may be an opportunity for the city council to weigh in. Some of them may be administrative and managerial, and so they may be conversations that we have with both the patrol officers union and the superior officers union in terms of things that may have to change in their collective bargaining agreement. So I think there'll be a number of different things that recommendations and a number of different ways that those recommendations will get implemented.
For lack of a better word, little hurdles that have to be overcome.
Right.
Hopefully little ones. But and that was trying to determine, if you will, the timeline for this whole assessment and the recommendation and the actual implementation. Do you envision that there will be a report, there will be recommendations on the report, and then following that there will be steps to get approval for and implement them, and so we're looking at a year, 2 years down the line, maybe longer for some of them?
So I think that part of what we've pushed for in this review is, and where it's different than the review that was done previously in 2015, is that this report is going to really not only kind of give I mentioned a blueprint and some framework, but really timelines too, right? So what are the short-term goals? What are some of the short-term things that can be done? What are the midterm goals? What are the long-term goals, right? And how do we get to some of those long-term goals are the vision that I have for the department. So how do we move in that direction? But there are going to be, it's going to be clear that there are timelines for certain things, and we're going to have, hopefully some goals in terms of what the next steps will be and how we implement them.
Yeah, and having done a few of those studies in another capacity in another industry, basically you're talking about the roadmap, so to speak, that everybody talks about. What are the major things that need to be done now? What are the things that are longer term? What sort of time frames do we see for them to happen? And that's what's going to come out of all this report.
Right.
Okay. So getting back to the search for the new police chief and so forth, what is the timeline in the process that you see or envision? First and foremost, you've got to get approval from the city council to be able to move ahead. So where is that? When do you think that will occur? What sort of additional steps do you need to go for there?
So I've introduced and then asked last Monday the council to consider this. I'm hoping that there is a hearing and a public safety committee hearing on the issue. Again, I mentioned on Monday night that we want to get feedback from both the Superior Officers Union and Patrol Officers Union. I've had a great working relationship with them. We've settled a strong contract with the Patrol Officers Union. We're finalizing a contract with the Superior Officers Union. We have some promotions that will be made. And so there is a collaborative working relationship. I want that to continue as I seek this amendment. And I do think that there's some room to work and to make sure that everyone's satisfied with the end result. And that's the goal. The goal is to get to solutions, and that solution or that result will tell us how far along we're going to be in terms of a timeline for everything else. It's kind of like dominoes, and this is the first domino that needs to fall. And that if it doesn't fall, we'll need to reassess and figure out what the next steps are.
Because my sense is that once the city council says, okay, once you've met with those other, the unions and so forth that you're talking about, that once you've got everybody in line, so to speak, then the next process is to form your search committee, establish criteria, then go out and start to.
And I'm committed to the assessment center process. You know, we did an assessment center the first time. I'm committed to that process. I think that we can have a conversation, and I look forward to input from folks about maybe how we have a little bit more of a public input in the process. But I think
you're
that
reading my mind, because I was going to ask that question as well. Go ahead.
But I think that I'm committed, and I will continue to be committed to that assessment center process. I sat in on the assessment center, the first one, and spent 8 hours with our candidates for chief, and it was an interesting process. And I think that is the best way. It's a best practice. It's been done throughout the Commonwealth. I think throughout the country. It's a way for us to make sure that we're getting the best candidate for the job.
Well, and I think one of the issues that came up in some of the discussion was the criteria for a new chief. Who sets the criteria? I know part of it is your vision, if you will, of the police department, but I'm assuming that there are certain standard criteria and so forth that are established that I think you would have to adhere to. And then, as you mentioned, there's public input in terms of that criteria. So you want to talk about how that criteria is going to be put together?
Right. So, and what we'll do is, I mean, it just starts with a job description.
Yeah.
I think that's like the step one, and we do have a job description, and we posted that. What we're looking to do is, again, make sure that we have the opportunity to have as many candidates as possible, and that we're looking for the best possible candidate. I think that we have a good opportunity here to make sure that we get the right person for this permanent position. And the first step in that is this amendment change to the special legislation. The next step will be what the process looks like for choosing the next chief. And as I said, we have a little bit of flexibility. I have a 1-year contract with Chief Guido, and depending on how that goes, that may need to be reassessed. But the goal is to have the process for the permanent chief be pretty soon and be able to move forward and get going on it.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask, because understanding that there are moving parts that you can't control at this point, and let's just say for the sake of argument it's December before it happens, going from December, that point where you start your search, how long do you envision that it would take to the point where you're able to make that decision on the next chief?
Right, and we, I've talked to and looked at what other communities have done. I know some communities had as many as 40 or 50 individuals apply for a job. So the process of vetting those folks takes a little while. It'll depend on really that first domino dropping, and if the city council amends the special legislation, then we can start talking about what the process will be thereafter. But until we know what that is, whether or not the pool will be expanded, it's a little early to say what exactly the process would look like.
So the key there is that that now we have a sense for the two major things that are going on, certain timelines, that there will be public input into that process, both processes as well. So that's really good. The last item I wanted to touch on related to this whole subject is, of course, is we all know that the key to hold this thing is this whole thing is to try to ensure that there's the best public safety and security for the citizens of the Revere possible. And that being said, my contention is that without the rank and file in the police department being taken care of and being thought of in this whole process and giving them, as you said, all the tools and everything that they need, that none of that's going to take place. What is the current status, if you will, in terms of the morale, the situation that the current police department is faced with, the people who are the boots on the ground, so to speak? So, how are they doing in all this?
I will say Chief Gatto has done a tremendous job, and there have been a number of things that have been implemented right away. We have more directed patrols going out. he's more engaged in the position. He has made sure that there are more walking patrols out on the street, and really that there's more of a focus on customer service. Those are all, I think, help with morale. Other things that I'll say have helped with morale, or I hope have helped with morale, we did, as I mentioned, settle a strong contract with our patrol officers union. We're on the verge of settling the superior officers contract. We have a number of promotions that are going to be made. I personally have been doing both kind of privately and publicly, telling the department that we're giving them the resources that they need to succeed. Probably said that enough times that people are sick of it. But privately, meeting with members of the department, going on ride-alongs, going to roll call, talking to folks, being available, letting them know that I'm here. If they have feedback, I want to hear it, and that what the goals are for the department. I think clearly kind of stating those and understanding them and being available to the men and women in the department who have continued and will continue to do a fantastic job on the street is important. And I'm going to continue doing that, and I know that is certainly a boost to morale.
Okay. All right. Moving on from that subject, and thank you very much. Well, before I move on, is there anything I didn't touch on relative to the whole issue of the police department, the new search, the assessment? Is there any other point that we haven't hit upon here that's important to make sure that we stress?
I think we've covered it all.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that being said, I want to move on to another subject that you've got a series of meetings coming up. Well, actually, two subjects. First and foremost is you have some meetings going on right now about parking restrictions, I guess, for lack of a better word. You had the first one, I think, Tuesday night.
We did.
You have another one coming up on the 28th, and then there'll be a third one sometime shortly after that, and I don't remember the
October
date.
11th.
October 11th. There you go. Talk about what you heard Tuesday night and what you envision for this whole process.
So I can say that parking has continued to be, and it will hopefully not forever, but it will probably continue to be a quality of life issue for a lot of our residents. And I heard this as a city councilor, continue to hear it as mayor, and we really want to think holistically about how we can fix our parking situations and the challenges that we have. And what we've talked about, the main focus of the conversations has been around, if we implement a residential parking program on a citywide basis, what would that look like? And what are the challenges? We wanted feedback from the residents because they know best. And as I said, it's a quality of life issue. We want to make sure that they have some input and that we're communicating well, back and forth. And so the general issue is that, we want to make sure that people feel like, this doesn't continue to be a quality of life issue for them. And we may not be able to fix everything, but if we can implement some solutions and do it in a way that's thoughtful and that takes into account the residents' feedback, I think we can make some good headway. We're unique because we have 3 MBTA stops. Mm-hmm. We have a number of roads that cut through the city that allow people to get into Boston, get downtown. And there's a lot of frustration about commuters parking, somewhere, people from Marblehead and Swampscott's, park in Beachmont, as you're probably very well aware of these issues. And the goal is to really make sure that this quality of life issue is managed in a way that makes sense, is thoughtful, and can be sustained over a long period of time.
Well, and going back to the study and the assessments with the police department, obviously there's going to be 3 or 4 meetings. There are going to be some recommendations. So basically you envision that we're having these meetings, the working group will come up with recommendations, then you'll be bringing those recommendations to the traffic commission.
Or, and ideally, I think the goal when we set this out was to have a pretty quick turnaround and to get recommendations by October. The last meeting will be a working meeting where we'll have actual recommendations put pen to paper, I guess. And the goal will be to have something to maybe implement in January. And we don't necessarily have to, have to meet the January deadline, but I think that would be that would be a goal, certainly. And if we can at least roll out what the recommendations are and how we're going to proceed moving forward in January, that would be a good first step.
Be interesting to see how that all develops, and I'm sure we'll talk some more about that.
We will be talking a lot about it, I'm sure.
Now, one of the other issues, and you're just about to start with citizen meetings, and on this issue to get input on it, is the senior citizen tax relief. And I know you're going to be talking about that, and we most likely will be talking about it also in our next conversation. Tell us a little bit about what that is, kind of some of the dates that currently exist there.
Yeah, so I've been campaigning, actually was knocking on doors over the last weekend in your neighborhood in Beachmont, talking to folks about...
You didn't come to my door.
Did not come to your door yet, not yet.
No.
But we are talking about this question that will be on the ballot in November, question 1, which is around senior tax relief. And I know I've talked a lot about this, and we're moving forward, and hopefully we'll get a positive vote in November. The mechanics, I guess, to get into the details on it, for those who may not know, the details are that what we want to do is be able to provide some relief to our seniors, right? And our seniors are, unfortunately, some of our most vulnerable homeowners, and we want to give relief to the folks who are living in the property that they own. And the way that we're going to do that, the way that I'm proposing to do that, is to for this ballot question to first be passed, and then we can move forward. By moving forward, what we'd be doing is we'd have qualifying seniors, those who are making less than $57,000 a year, and there's no asset limit on this, but individuals who are making less than $57,000 a year would qualify, who are seniors, and the mechanics of it would be the average assessed value of a property. So let's say it's $300,000. 10% of that average assessed value would be taken, so $30,000. That would then be taken off of our qualifying seniors assessment. So what we've done, the numbers, it looks like there are around 1,000 senior citizen homeowners who would be eligible for this program. And it's really the first step in making sure that we provide a residential tax exemption. As I've said this before, it's kind of a little bit of a pilot. It's a manageable number of individuals. It's a number of individuals who are kind of most at risk in terms of higher property taxes, higher water and sewer rates. Any relief that we can give to those folks is important. And that's what we're looking to do, and looking to get a positive vote from the city in November, and we'll wrap up, and I'll be knocking on doors. I'll be getting out, getting some fresh air. I look forward to that, meeting people and hearing all of the good and bad that's going on in the city, and I want to make sure that we're accessible and available, and I look forward to the ongoing campaign. But we're going to have, on top of knocking on doors, we're going to have a number of public forums that will be hopefully well attended, and we'll be able to roll out this measure, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about it in depth, and if people have questions, we'll be able to answer them.
Well, I think, as I said, and we'll be looking forward to doing another conversation with the mayor probably sometime in October, so it'll be a real appropriate time to kind of talk about the results of the meetings you've had, and maybe a little bit more details about the program, so people are well informed about it before they go to the polls in November.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Well, that covers it for the items and the topics that I wanted to talk about today. Is there anything else that we've not hit upon that you wanted to bring up?
No, there have been, there are a number of great things that are happening in the city. Obviously, on Monday night, the zoning for the NECO building was officially changed to allow for robotics and advanced manufacturing and biotech. So we're hoping that we can work with them to land a great tenant. 800,000 square feet of manufacturing space, very exciting.
Actually, tenants, right?
Tenants, yes,
it
could be multiple tenants. So we're excited about that. There's progress being made all over the city, and continue to push forward and make sure that we're doing best by all the residents.
Well, as always, it's been the time goes by so fast. I mean, we could go
flies
on
by.
for hours at this point, but it's been a great pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the next conversation. Thanks a lot.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank
All
you.
right. Well, until the next time, that's it for Conversations with the Mayor. Take care.